Mr. Atherton, tell me what happened last night, because I was actually on air and I just saw Twitter erupt in fury.
Well, it surprised me as well. I'd gone down to the local Boots chemist to get my jab, and I've sort of got my number out and showed it to the lady, and she said, "Yes, we're doing the Moderna today." And I said, "Well, I don't want the Moderna because I've had two Pfizer jabs." So got to say, the difference between private enterprise and the National Health Service. She said, "Not to worry, not to worry, David. Here's my number. Give me a ring tomorrow, and we'll arrange a nice little Pfizer jab." So I went outside. I sort of pushed by it down, and I just sent out that tweet. What you're doing, and what's this all about. I've never seen in the press or on Twitter or anywhere else that the government policy was to give different jabs. I was generally unaware of it, and also what I read in the previous this week as well, that 4 Scandinavian countries have banned the Moderna jab for the under-18s. I think it interferes over myocarditis, whatever the word is. I wasn't very happy about that, so I sent my tweet out. And I thought, blimey, Sajid Javid's replied to it. Oh,
you didn't know him? You don't have a relationship with Javid? You don't know him from the past?
No,
okay.
Not at all, no.
So he saw your tweet and responded in quite a spiky manner.
Well, it was rude and condescending and full of entitlement, as far as I'm concerned. It really was quite an arrogant thing to say. That I'm here to the great deity, the great God, the National Health Service. I should worship at its feet and be grateful, that I can have a jab. I thought it was quite appalling, actually, in that respect.
Dr. Strain, what did you make of Sajid Javid's response to David Atherton saying, look, you've got to show the NHS a bit more respect?
It's a really interesting point. I mean, so firstly, to answer David's question about whether it's appropriate, whether it's safe to have 2 different vaccines, one of the things that all the evidence is suggesting is actually you'll get a better immune response by having a different vaccine with your booster than you got from your primary. It's like any sort of education. You present it in one way first time, and then you present it a slightly different way the second time, you'll get a better response. And that's the only way things like Ebola vaccines actually work. So from that point of view, I'm not at all worried about David being offered a different vaccine for his booster as he had for his primary. And I myself had Pfizer first time, and I've had Moderna for my booster. However, I would actually agree with David's point that Sajid Javid's response was not the appropriate one. David's asked a really appropriate question, and what's going on? Why am I getting something different? And I would suggest that it's probably because Sajid Javid is not fully familiar with the science behind it and has fallen back on a don't question it, we know what we're doing approach, rather than saying, actually, I'm not sure what's going on, I'll find out and let you know, which I think is probably what the appropriate response should have been.
Yeah, and the thing is, David, I don't understand if the government wants us all to be jabbed, and we know that they do because they're starting to threaten Christmas now if we don't get boosted. Yeah. Surely they should realise that giving consumer choice and allowing people to choose if they want the Pfizer, if they want the Moderna, could actually increase the take-up. So in America, it's your choice. You can have Johnson & Johnson, you can have Pfizer, you can have Moderna, you can have whatever jab you want. I don't understand why we don't offer people choice in this country.
Well, we did. The issue of choice was not the issue with me. I felt as if this was a new government policy that was being foisted on me without my knowledge and without my consent. And it was a case of shut up and put up and get on with it.
Got it. And David Strain, what do you make of that? Because
and David, I would actually agree with you that I don't think that is the right approach. However, I do fully appreciate that when we're delivering vaccines, they come in big batches. And as soon as you open a batch, that batch has to be used immediately. And we are taking a slightly different approach to the States and to many other countries, that we are trying to bring the vaccines to as many people as possible rather than putting them in big mass vaccination centres that many people would then have to travel for hours in order to get to. And if you're going to a smaller place, then you don't really want to have potential thousands of vaccines left unused at the end of the day that can't be gone on. But what I think, Sajid Javid, and actually what we really need now is a better education program, a better, information that says, if you want the Moderna, this is the route. If you want the Pfizer, this is the route. We're not giving AstraZeneca for the follow-up vaccines because there is a fear that you might become immune to the vaccine itself in the case of AstraZeneca. So that's why we're not giving that as a follow-up. So lots of people have had the AstraZeneca as a primary and aren't getting the Pfizer.
Okay, understand that. And I get this conversation about vaccines, and I'm glad that we agree. I want to broaden the point out now, though, because the way that Javid's point on Twitter has been taken by a lot of us is that now that he's become health secretary, he wants to stop and shut down criticism of the NHS. And I worry, Dr. Strain, that the NHS is almost treated like a religion in this country. And it sometimes means that folk like me are accused of doing something wrong if we just hold the NHS to account. And do you think that we actually, as customers of the NHS, I mean, we pay for it, we pay hugely through our tax pounds, do you think that we should have to respect the NHS, or can't we demand better service? Because the NHS has let us down a lot over the past 20 months.
So actually, I would argue that the NHS hasn't really let us down. The NHS itself has been let down.
Well, it has.
There has been gross underfunding for decades into the NHS. We actually entered the pandemic with 80,000 fewer
How can you say there's gross
needed.
underfunding of the NHS when actually, as a percentage of our GDP and our tax dollars, we are pumping more and more in by the year, and the service has got worse?
So I would argue that we are not pumping more as part of the GDP compared to our European counterparts. Actually, when it comes to the cost that we put into our NHS compared to Europe, we are right down at the bottom. We are 25th out of 27 when we were still part of the EU. And so when it came to actually value for money, many other NHS systems actively want to try and mimic what we do in number of healthcare providers per patient, number of the free at the point of access, and what we are able to do there. However, what we can say is there has been billions thrown at the pandemic that would have been much better spent had it been used by the people who actually knew what they were doing rather than handing money to the private investors. I mean, take the 32 billion that's gone into the so-called NHS test and trace. That was not the NHS test and trace, and we've recently seen the major failings of that when these private companies that took the money didn't actually tell people when they tested positive. And that money had gone to NHS providers who delivered the vaccine program and managed to get right at the very top of Europe when we first rolled out the vaccine program. We might have seen a very different response.
David, don't you think it's important to be able to criticise the NHS without being lectured, this is David Atherton, without being lectured that we're not showing health professionals respect? Because I think they're two completely different things.
Well, why should any idea, why should any entity be above criticism? Even people like myself, I have a certain respect for the National Health Service. But what I don't like is, as soon as I bring up any legitimate concerns, people are straight down your throat. You just want a purely private health insurance type health system in this country. You want poor people to die. You want poor people to be left on the streets. No, it's not. I'm a taxpayer. We spent £200 billion last year on the National Health Service, and the service has got worse. There's 5.8 million people on waiting lists for operations at the moment. There are 33,000 cancer patients who are not getting any treatment at the moment, and they reckon in all there's 50,000 people in this country who haven't had carrying cancer and haven't been diagnosed with it. You know, I read the other day that a GP was saying that he's now what's the word? He's diagnosing 4 cancers a week. 4 cancers a week every week now, when normally it was 2 to 3 cases a month. You know, the neglect that's gone on. So we put all the money into COVID and what have we.
Have to be able to have those discussions. I agree. Fascinating clash tonight. Thank you so much. That was classic Liberal commentator David Atherton and the clinical academic Dr. David Strain. Thank you both.